Hey, y'all. Hey. So, welcome to another episode of The Full Set. I am your hostess with the most X. My name is Didi Delgado, and I am here with my esteemed colleague, none other than April Rain. April, welcome to The Full Set. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
What? I feel like it's definitely the other way around. I don't even know, like I be around like all y'all like superstars, and I'm just like, I'm cool. This is like the time that I met Bow Wow, and I was like, hello, sir. So
Yeah, Bow Wow comes and goes in my estimation, but I put my Spanx on one grunt at a time like everybody else.
yes. So I am so elated to have you here. I'm just gonna read your bio because to me that is the curation of who we want people to know that we are. And so there's that. Um, I am here with diversity and inclusion advocate, media maven, CEO, ReignStorm Ventures creator, hashtag of Oscars so white creator, April Rain. April practiced law for 15 years with an emphasis on campaign finance law and reform. But her life took an unexpected turn when her commentary on the lack of people of color represented in the 2015 Oscar nominations compelled her to tweet a now famous hashtag Oscars so white. The hashtag turned into a movement that affected tangible change. The Academy made its most systemic change in its 90 plus year history by committing to doubling the number of women and double the number of people of color in its voting membership. That hashtag also branded a diversity and inclusion movement that was reaching a tipping point, and a social and racial justice revolution was born. Boom. As CEO of ReignStorm Ventures, April advocates for the representation of marginalized communities in all areas of the arts, entertainment, and tech through speaking engagements, activation, digital and traditional media, corporate consulting, and lending her voice to festivals, panels, higher learning institutions, and other related efforts. Under April's direction, ReignStorm Ventures is focused on three major areas, and this is important because you and I will be discussing two of them. Business consultancy, ensuring companies, studios, fashion houses, and others are making inclusive, equitable, and intentional marketing and hiring decisions. Salons, concepting, curating, and executing unique gatherings sponsored by and tailored for brands to showcase their products and services to a strategically chosen audience. Media hosting, interviewing, and panel mediation. April recently moderated a daily panel at the Canes Lions. Did I say that right? Because I'm not bougie enough.
It's can, but that's fine. It doesn't really
It's
matter.
the Canes Lion, girl.
There it is.
The Canes Lion Inkwell Beach that became the touch point for cultural activations and trends during the festival. And she continues to be a highly sought after voice for television, producers, writers, organizations, live panels, and many more on subjects related to inclusion, diversity, and representation. When April's not doing all that shit and advocating for traditionally underrepresented communities. She's recounting stories of living with very strong-minded teenage daughter and revealing to her 160K plus social media followers that she's a huge pop culture nerd. April, welcome to the Full Set.
Thank you so much. Very happy to be here.
So I just want to jump right into it. Have you seen Method Man lately?
Oh my God. I mean, I have seen Method Man for decades. He is
I
always.
feel like I'm just not seeing Method Man.
No, well, why? I mean, even when he did You're All I Need to Get By with Mary originally, right? He was the man. Well, I thought he was always the most attractive member of Wu. And then when Mary came back, and I can't even remember what award show that was, he had on like the three-piece suit walking the red carpet, and then he had on the all white with the bucket hat when he came out, and did his verse, which was fantastic. And now he's going to be on one of the Power spinoffs on Stars.
I wasn't even gonna watch no spinoff. Power Confidential,
and
Power
he's
his
gonna
story
be on
house.
the one
The fuck what it
with
is. But
the
now
boy that we hate. Well, what's that boy's name? With Tariq. He's on
Tariq.
that one. Like, I think there's like 3 or 4 different spinoffs, and I was like, I'm not sure I'm as interested in Tariq's character, so I don't know if I'm gonna watch that one. But
does Tariq have character is the more important question. So there's that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot. Something I just saw the photo and I was just like, where have I fucking been? So another thing I wanted to talk to you about is like our current political climate. I know that I know that you're a former attorney. And so like just coming from that background and then also knowing pop culture. And I just made a post about what's your favorite Juneteenth song. And it was really asinine question because every Black song should be the favorite Juneteenth song. So there's that. But tomorrow is Juneteenth. And now that Trump is out here taking credit and shit for popularizing the holiday, and it's being recognized as a state holiday in various states. Do you think we're opening ourselves up to your newest hashtag Juneteenth so white?
Not this year.
Not this year.
And I'm
like it's too
hoping,
powerful.
right. For us this year, I think we still got it. And I'm hoping that we can hold it close so that it does not get appropriated like so many other things do. I think we also need to remember that, this is not, it is a commemoration of the freeing of enslaved people, our ancestors in 1865, right? But let's remember that the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect in 1863. So the people in Texas who started Juneteenth had to deal with 2 additional years of enslavement.
Right.
2 additional years of Black women and girls being raped, 2 additional years of families being separated, right? All of the things that came with enslavement. And to be very clear, just because the slaves weren't free, we are still waiting on our 40 acres and a mule. So it doesn't mean that things were a lot better. It just transferred from enslavement to sharecropping and indentured servitude, right? So this is a commemoration, but I'm sort of reticent to call it a celebration in that sense, right? Because to me, it's more like Memorial Day. We are commemorating the people that we lost, but we shouldn't necessarily be playing, Before I Let Go by Frankie Beverly and Maze.
Wow, I feel personally attacked by this relatable content.
I mean, get down how you get down, and we're still living in this pandemic, although I haven't seen as many masks as I would like. So if people are having the proverbial or real life cookout tomorrow, good for you. Wear your mask, wash your hands, social distance.
Thank you for that carefully curated content. I appreciate it. I'm thinking about like the current uprisings too, because we are in the midst of a pandemic, and I'm glad you brought up that point. Do you think social media has impacted the most recent uprisings compared to the uprisings and rebellions of the 60s devoid of social media? Like, has it helped or hurt our movements? Because I think of the revolution will not be televised, and like we out here being upset, and I'm saying as a person who used to be on the front line, we out here upset that our photos, but I'm like, all my protest photos are on my website. I mean, the FBI knows, you know what I'm saying? Like, but then there's now this new culture. It's like, you can't, like, it's safety. And I'm like, I don't know. They still found Fred Hampton, right? So there's that.
Right. I think that there's a lot going on. We know, I mean, we've seen the different police departments and federal organizations saying, hey, if you see something wrong happening at a protest, please send us pictures, right? So they are looking for people. And who's to say what's wrong or bad or illegal. And so I believe that people should be wearing masks for 2 reasons. Number one, we're still in the middle of a global pandemic. Number two,
still dead
you don't necessarily want to be identifying yourself on camera and making it easier for law enforcement to find you 6 months from now, right? So absolutely. With respect to your other question, social media has brought on an amazing amount of change because we are able to document everything in real time. There are folks who are on social media who are helping to organize and mobilize, right? So you may not be on the streets, but you can tell folks, hey, use milk instead of water if you get tear gas, or, the cops are over here, so let's get, so people are mobilizing at this church or this safe space, and being able to disseminate that information is fantastic in real time. Back in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the protests were very geocentric, meaning if something was going on in Detroit, you may not have the money, the time, the ability to get off work if you lived in Philly. And so you weren't really as interested in what was happening and finding out about it. You wouldn't find out about something in Detroit if you lived in Philly. And even if you lived in Philly, you were either looking at a flyer on a tree, reading a Black-owned newspaper, and we have very few of those left anymore, or it was in the Sunday church announcements, right?
Right.
And now, with the march against the immigrant ban, the march against the Muslim ban, the march for women, the march for the movement for Black lives, and then these marches, protesting police brutality with respect to Brianna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and so many others, we are able to mobilize thousands of people, not just around the country, but around the world using social media.
I'm here for it. I love it. I think about like your role as so there's like actually a couple of things I want to talk to you about because my job basically was like, oh, you're an activist, which is what I've been telling them for actually 3 years, almost 3 years I've worked for them. And they were just like, oh, I was like, I'm really passionate about like the changes that need to be implemented here, especially because my company is so deeply nestled in with settlement houses and the civil rights movement here in upstate New York. And so I was asked to be on a diversity and inclusion committee. And I said, I respectfully declined. And they were like, but you're so passionate. I was like, yeah, and I need to get paid for my passion. I was like, because
you're passionate and Black. We thought it was automatic. Yeah.
Works for us. Like, say.
Yeah, you can check off all the boxes. Yep.
What do you say to tenants? One, to corporations who feel like they can utilize our labor because, I mean, God damn it, don't you want change? Don't you want to see things different? And I say that as a person who had advocated for Columbus Day to be eradicated at my job. And then I was like, basically I asked 2 days ago, I was like, can we celebrate Juneteenth? Like, can you pay everybody? And he was like, we can't do that. It's an executive decision. I was like, well, y'all make executive decisions on snow days, like right when it's happening. I was like, so can you just email people? And next thing I know, I get an email that's like, thanks to Dee Dee. And now niggas is like, thanks for the 3-day weekend. I'm like, no, it's serious. So I had to like write this whole thing about why Juneteenth is important. But what would you say, like when you go in and you do these new initiatives because you've shifted, right? Because of this, you're like, oh shit, this is actually a real thing that like needs to be explored and expanded upon further. What do you go in and say to companies? Like, stop. I told them to stop terrorizing their Black employees. I thought I was going to get fired, but it hasn't happened yet, but I'm waiting. But do you go in and shake them and say, stop terrorizing your Black employees? And then what do you say to someone like me who's like, they're well sought after, but I'm not getting paid? Like, that's a whole position,
Right. For employees who are sort of, bootstrapped into becoming, the expert on all things Black or all things queer or, whatever the marginalized group is, go back to your job description, right? If what they're asking you to do now is not in your job description from when you started, and 90% of the time, it's not, then you should be paid for that additional labor, and make it very clear, okay, you want me to focus on this, you want me to sit on this committee, you want me to write this email about Juneteenth, whatever the case may be, let's ensure that my direct report knows that I'm going to be a little late on whatever they're expecting because now you've got me doing additional stuff.
Yeah, I'm atting them as soon as this thing is over.
I mean, that just makes sense. If you are asking me to do more, then let's ensure that my plate doesn't overflow in that way. Help me to help you, right?
Right.
And then, as you did, make sure it's something that you want to do, and figure out why they're asking you specifically, and that's a really good question to ask. I am so honored that you would ask me to be on this committee. What is it about my skill set that you think directly relates?
Because it puts the ball back in their court. Like, then they have to
right. Because I mean, you want to see
so
them.
Many tools.
You want a direct answer. You don't want the answer to be, well, you're Black, so we just thought. And it needs to be something more than that, because not all skin folk are kinfolk. We can look at Ben Carson and Omarosa and Candace Owens and all the rest of them and say, we don't necessarily want them on a diversity and inclusion committee, regardless of the fact that they are actually Black, right? And when I go in to talk to corporations, I have two conversations. I have one with the marginalized communities, and they usually have an ERG, an employee resource group. And I say, okay, this is a safe space. We're not using any names today, but you let me know what the issues are. what are you dealing with? What are the microaggressions? What are the macroaggressions? What do you want to get out of my time here? Then I have a separate meeting, right? Because it's one thing when you preach to the choir, so I can go in and do a DNI talk and all, okay, April Rain's showing up, so all the Black people are going to come. It's like, well, I can't, there's nothing for me to tell you that you don't already know.
Right.
I love y'all, but I'm not sure it's worth your time to hear me saying the stuff that you know already, right? So instead, let's flip it, because all too often the C-suite, the executives, the supervisors are not people of color, right? And thank goodness for those.
I'm the executive assistant to the CEO.
See?
Yeah.
So
all the white people that are dragging me say I don't have a job, and I'm like, I go to work every day.
Do you get a check? Then you got a job. That's it. So, and then I have a separate conversation with, the supervisors, the managers, whoever that may be, and talk about, especially right now, my email, my phone is blowing up. Oh, we definitely need, because Black is in, so we need to figure out.
Black is the new Black, baby.
Right. So we need to figure out what we can do, and can you come consult and whatever. And it's like, okay, send me your org chart, with pictures. Let me see what I'm working with. Right. And then let's have a very honest conversation. Yeah, you want to put out that tweet and that, press statement that says Black Lives Matter, but do they in your office? Because I don't see them when I'm walking through.
Or in our case, do they on the board? Like, and
it's so rare that they're on the board. Like, I don't even attempt to get that far. Right. Let's start with middle management. What does that look like? And then let's have a conversation about recruitment and retention, and what are your hiring processes look like? And how are you mentoring marginalized people once they get in, so that it's not just a revolving door and they're out again in 18 months.
Ooh, thank you so much for that, because that's a word. I was actually telling my team, I said, I plan on watching this again after we finish recording. So thank you. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about Juneteenth is because, as I said before, that Cuomo just passed it, and then he was like, there's more legislation coming. And I think about all the rioting and the looting, that's been happening, and how people say protesting doesn't work. Why are you damaging the property? Not the Wendy's. Why did you burn up the Wendy's? Because a Black man was killed at Wendy's. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and let's be clear, the footage that I've seen shows that it wasn't us that looted, and burned down the Wendy's. And there were several others who were creating damage and making mischief, who were not part of Black Lives Matter, who were not, there protesting George Floyd's death or anybody else's death. They were there to cause damage to property. And so I think we definitely need to keep a strong, bright line between people who are peacefully protesting and discussing the issues of state-sanctioned violence, and then those who come from different states or maybe within that same state, but are really only there about the destruction of property, and then being able to blame it on the closest Black person, right? They're two different things that are happening. And so, when Trump or anybody else talks about, the thugs or the lawless or the Antifa, it's like, Antifa's not really even an organization.
I mean, I've been saying that forever. So thank you for affirming it. Like, I'm like, who is it? Like, I remember they tried those 3 white boys, and they were saying that they were Antifa, and they were like the case had to be thrown out. There's no what?
Yeah, it's not a thing.
It's not a thing.
I mean, if you want to call it like lawless white boys, yes, but it is that disparate in the sense that there is no organization. If you're looking for the president of Antifa, that doesn't exist.
They were like, let's get them on the RICO.
Right. It's just lawless white boys.
So do you think that is it important? Is rioting and looting important to getting shit done in this country? And I'm asking because when we talk about pop culture, the Netflix documentary on the LA riots just came out and was released. And I was watching, I was half asleep, but I was watching it, and I was just like, and then we had Bambute Pistola on the show the other day, and he was talking about how he was there. And I was like, did it take for that to make a marker? You know what I'm saying? Or was it We Shall Overcome NAACP? I mean, what isn't both important?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are many paths to liberation. And so, people, oh, well, you're just a Twitter activist, it's like, well, I think, that we need people on the outside, we need people on the inside. We need good people within law enforcement and police department who can actually make changes, right? The DA, the mayor, all of that is government, right? And we say, oh, well, we don't trust the government. I absolutely get it. But if you want changes to be made, you need to have somebody on the inside who can actually make those changes, so an open-minded governor, mayor, city councilman, whatever the case may be. And then we need people on the outside who are protesting and saying, whatever it is, we're boycotting Starbucks, we're not coming back to work, until we get our PPE, as the healthcare workers did, whatever the case may be. So yes, again, I'm separating looting, right? Because property damage isn't always necessary, but I understand it.
I mean, Marc Jacobs is okay with it. I just need a pair of glasses.
Well, see, that's personal. I mean, that you can set up like a GoFundMe for, right?
Right.
But so
thank you for the blessing.
On the one hand, I'm saying, if we're taking down Confederate statues, if we're calling that looting, then sure, let's go ahead and do that, right? Okay. But if we're talking about, and I want to be very careful that we are protecting Black-owned businesses, right? And
yes, no, I agree with that. Yeah,
people of color and marginalized communities, because that is, part of the culture. But I definitely think that protesting, people in the streets, and we've seen it, the media has stopped covering it, but there are still thousands and thousands of people in the streets every day protesting state-sanctioned violence and police brutality. And we are seeing changes. The mayor of Minneapolis was out there and he got shamed and had to do like this walk of shame. But the next day he said, we're going to start talking about disbanding the police. And that's huge. And that, I think that only could have happened because of days and days and days of protest.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that framing. And speaking of the protests, Brianna Taylor's killers still haven't been charged or arrested. And so do we need to move these lootings and or riots to Louisville or what? Like, I mean, tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, I don't know. I'm not saying that that's what niggas
you
should
got
do.
The day off, right? So
I definitely have the day off.
I mean, the people are marching in Louisville and it's not getting the attention. And the bigger story there is how we do not uplift, support, amplify Black women the way we do Black men. And when I say we, I mean everybody. Black men don't uplift, support Black women the way Black women do for Black men.
I'm so glad you brought up this
topic. Everybody else, white folks, Latinx folks, everybody. So Black women stand on our own. So yes, those protests are happening, but they should be just as loud, if not louder, for Brianna Taylor, because her killer has still not been arrested. And on the other hand, we see George Floyd, there is movement happening there. So yes, keep the pressure on there, but my people have always been able to multitask, so maybe we just need to shift it so that it's 60-40 or whatever the case may be, until we get some, and I don't call it justice, right? Because Brianna Taylor is gone. And that would be the, her living would be the only justice, but accountability is what we need for her and for Tony McDade, and for the Black trans women that have been
Nina Pop.
Yes. Yeah. I think we've had 5 men in the last couple of weeks that have been found hanged from trees, modern day lynchings. We don't do that. We do complete suicide, unfortunately, but that's typically not the way that we do it. Go outside with a rope and decide to end our lives, and
also the 19-year-old activist Toyin.
Yes, Toyin.
Just sometimes I'd be at a loss for words. I'd be so angry. And I'm glad that you brought up the converse is, I don't know if it's a conversation, but I'm not trying to talk about it. Today, a Black man called my company and told them that I had maybe gone through personnel files and gotten his telephone number because I made him fragile in his masculinity today. When I asked him, if you're going to call out all the Black women who have been marching and organizing around the deaths of Black men, you're asking us to also organize around intra-community violence when we ourselves are often the victims of such. I was like, and when you're talking about the myth of Black on Black violence, I said, if you're talking about the 9 shootings that happened, I said, I'd implore you to look at who needs to be having that conversation. It's not women who are committing these acts against one another. So we can understand systemic racism, we can understand poverty, we can understand all that shit. I was like, but I think this is more of a men's conversation than when women need to come to the front, because women are holding y'all down. While you're out here pumping, women are holding y'all down when you go to jail, when you come home, when you're on our Section 8. I said, we just holding, your mamas is holding you down, the cousins, the girlfriends, the sisters. I was like, and so like you're demanding more labor. And I think about how J. Cole just recently.
Yeah, with no name. Yeah. Out of nowhere.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm
That
arguing
was
with my
really,
partner about this. I was like, are you, I was like, do you see? Like, and he was like, no, I agree, but she shouldn't have critiqued. I was like, why do I give you pussy? I don't understand why. I really don't understand why.
yeah. I mean, it's a lot. And a lot of the pushback that I'm seeing by Black men against having these conversations about intra-community violence against Black women, the arguments that they make are very similar to the arguments that white folks make when we talk about racism. Right? So, oh, well, it's really not that bad and we need to focus on something else. And, why are you trying to bring people down? And, and Bill Cosby was about to buy NBC. And, I mean, it's
5G.
Yeah,
I laugh every time I say it. I feel like Cardi B saying coronavirus. Like,
right. It's a lot, and a lot. Well, there are some brothers who suffer from hit dog collar syndrome, which I think is what happened with J. Cole. Like, No Name didn't use no names. Like she
said all of y'all. Where are the rappers who say you don't want no smoke?
Right.
I wanted her to say Lil Yachty because I didn't want to smoke with Lil Yachty. I want to see Lil Yachty on the front line. I just want to know who wants to smoke now. I want to know if it's appropriate. So I appreciate that framing because I mean, maybe there's not an answer to the question. I just like shaming J. Cole. And so like, I didn't know if you wanted to join me in that or whatever, but
I liked some of his earlier stuff, but I just think that he handled
Get off my dick.
In it, well, okay. I liked Middle Child.
Okay, I'll allow it.
Okay, yeah. So, but I think that he felt triggered for whatever reason, in reading her stuff, and instead of saying, because he started out by saying, "I'm not that smart,"
I can't read. It's been 6 years since I've been famous, but I don't have the opportunities you have.
But it's like, bro, you're also 35 and a multimillionaire. Right? So you have the privilege of having all of these resources for yourself to learn and grow. And I truly believe in meeting people where they are, and people's journeys start at different times and at different places. And I get that. But my goodness, join No Names Book Club. Like she literally is doing the work and
he's like, I admire her, but I'm gonna write 16 bars about her.
Yeah. But then she came back with a response and I absolutely appreciate that. I just read it once, but the overall gist I got was, why are you talking about me when people are, when our people are dying in the streets, And to be fair to J. Cole, when I initially read it, I was like, okay, how do we know that he's specifically talking about her?
This is what my partner asked. I was like, because I know.
How do we know it's that and not he's just, maybe he's just talking in third person. So it's one internet random talking to another internet random, but everybody said, oh no, this is about No Name because of that one particular tweet. And I was like, okay. And I said, if he was smart, and this is why it's like, people, I need all of the famous people to call me and just allow me to craft their PR statements because they get it wrong.
I'm about to pay you. I'm about to make these white women pay you because I need a PR team.
Okay. So, and I said, if he were smart, what he would have said was, that wasn't about anybody in particular. That wasn't about me. That wasn't about No Name, but I'm going to continue to learn and grow and move on. And
that's exactly what I said. I was like, he was talking about her. I said, because he had the opportunity to lie and deny it. And I said, he chose to be like, I respect this so much. We're just going to have to disagree.
Right. And if all of that is true, if you want to learn, but you don't like the tone that she's using, even though she's not talking to you, then reach out to her. Right? Just have a conversation.
Come on.
Slide into her DM.
Come on, Raina April. Come on now.
I mean, that just seems too much like right, I guess. But And
seems
here
the
we are.
easy way out,
Here we
seems like the adult thing to do, seems like the mature thing to do. I wanted to ask you, just because I really admire you so much,
are.
I wanted to ask you, do you feel that your accomplishments are sometimes overshadowed by the success of your hashtag? I mean, you're super accomplished, but like, do sometimes people look at you as the Oscar so white girl? Should I change your name in my phone contacts?
You know what? I'm okay with that. I'm
Really?
okay
Okay.
with that because at the end of the day, you know,
At the
I don't. I'm first. I'm an ambivert, meaning, you know, I can turn it on like you and I are having this conversation, right? And we're super duper chatty. But after this, I'm gonna put on my bunny slippers and go curl up on the couch. And you know,
Okay.
so I can turn it on for a room of 500 people and sway folks and have them screaming in the aisles or whatever. But I would always rather be at home by myself, right? So I'm an ambivert. I can turn it on and be an extrovert, at my core, I'm an introvert. So I am fine with people talking about Oscar so white and not necessarily talking about April Rain, right? Because it's not about me. It's about creating more opportunities for marginalized folks in the entertainment industry. Right. So if you're using Oscar so white to have that conversation, or you're talking about journalism, and because somebody created a journalism so white, somebody created a Brooklyn so white talking about gentrification, all of that is
Right.
fantastic, and I support it and amplify it when I see it. I don't I don't need, you know, first of all, there's still way too much work to be done, right? So I am
Okay.
definitely not taking a victory lap by any means. But if people are
Ooh.
having, you know, if people are still talking about Oscar so white, we are now in year 6. I
Right.
created Oscar so white in January of 2015. Hashtags come and go every hour, every day. The fact that we're still having this conversation 6 years later means that the hashtag is bigger than me, and that's exactly the way it should be. You know, and every November,
Mm.
December, you know, right before the nominations come out, oh, it looks like Oscar so white 4.0, and this is a problem
Right.
again.
Right.
That's fantastic because it means that I did my little part of the job to keep the conversation going. So I don't need to push it anymore, right? I don't need to
Okay.
start the conversation again. People are having it without me, and I love that.
How do you feel, like, this is not even on my script, this is my second to last question. How do you feel, because like when I was contacted by Dr. Moya Bailey to be in hashtag activism, I thought she was trolling me. And so like I was like, what? I don't do hashtags. I don't. I used to do these really long hashtags like delete me, like with mad
Yeah,
ease or
like the
whatever.
Facebook hashtag. Yeah, I had just a sausage, egg, and cheese for breakfast, and now, yes, Johnson, right?
I
Yes.
was like, why do you want me in this shit? And she was like, to write it forward. And I was like, what? Or whatever.
Nice.
So one of my introduction, like my part in hashtag activism is actually the chapter after yours. And so it was talking about like the Black Lives Matter hashtag. And so I'm honored to be asked to be in the book, but you're also inside of hashtag activism.
Oh, well,
And yeah, you are. And so like when they're talking about necessarily like the things that drive data and analytics, and do you feel like that has your, I know you're saying you're not taking a victory lap, but do you feel like it contributes to the conversation of more hashtags surrounding that? Like I just asked you about Juneteenth, so white, I mean, you know,
yeah.
like
I mean,
so.
I think so. You know, in a data perspective, you know,
Right.
Twitter told me that between the time that the very first Oscar so white tweet, which was in January of 2015, and then about 6 weeks later, when the actual Oscars took place, Oscar so white, the hashtag, was used over 600,000 times, right, around the world. That wasn't just me, obviously. And you know, and it's a part of a bigger conversation about Black Twitter and culture and how we move things and get things done, right? And so hashtags are used for everything now. You know, every single TV show has a hashtag, right? That's not Facebook
Right.
adjacent. I know we're on Facebook right now, you know, but that's not a Facebook thing. That's not an Instagram thing. That's a Twitter thing. That's where that's coming from.
I hate Twitter.
So yeah, you know, I appreciate.
I hate it because I don't understand it, if I had to be honest. And so now I understand how white people feel. Hmm.
Yeah, see, I mean, so, you know, I appreciate being included in those conversations, you know, of hashtags that created some change, you know, like Black Lives Matter, like Me Too, you know, and there are so many of them. So I am honored.
Yeah,
That,
Feminista Jones was in there about like the "Are you okay?" is this,
yeah,
and so I learned things about hashtag. Like I didn't think it was so important. And, you know, myself and the 100 copies that are sitting in my living room waiting to be mailed to Black femmes across the country, I didn't think it was that important. I was like, why am I in this book? And, you know, it's just very interesting. So I would recommend to anyone who's watching that to read about the analytics of like what it is that Black femmes are out here saying and how we get amplified in these ways. My second to last question is about self-care. So I know that you're on it and I'm not.
Well, I
I'm
talk
not.
a good game. Yeah, I talk a
Okay.
good game.
So that's what I'm saying. So I want to, if I could like have a talk a good game wolf ticket section, I'd want to be in April's section, right? And so like, how do I fake the funk until I actually get to self-actualization of what my self-care should be?
Yeah. So what I like to say is that your self-care should be consistent and unapologetic. You know, so if you need to put it on your calendar the same way you put on, you know, your annual OBGYN visit or, you know, date night with your partner, whatever the case may be, it
Dick.
needs to
I
be,
mean, whatever.
I mean, if you're putting that on your calendar, fine.
I put it on the
You know,
calendar.
it needs to be consistent, and you should not feel guilty about ensuring that your well does not run dry, because you know, on the shoulders of Black women is the entire world. You know, we are expected to, you know, we're expected to save Joe Biden, you know, in November. You know, we are expected to, you know, we are always on the front lines of the movements, you know, whether it's
Right.
civil rights or immigration rights or Muslim rights or whatever the case may be. And so, you know, we pour into so many people, you know, our children, our community, strangers all the time. And we're doing so much pouring that we begin to run dry. Right. And so we need to ensure that our well, our internal well does not run dry, and we replenish. You know, I talk, when I do these talks, you know, on planes, they always say, you know, put the mask on yourself first
I
and
hate
then
that phrase, but
help
I
your
hear
child.
you.
See, I never understood it. And as a parent, I was like, no, you know, I don't know these people. I can't trust that these people are going to help my child. So I'm going to put it on my mask first. But, you know, eventually I understood, well, if you get knocked on the back of your head, you're still, you know, then you still can't help your child, right? And you still won't know that somebody else is going to do it. So you have to put your mask on first and be unapologetic for that. Self-care means different things. You know, I try to commit to reading 1 hour a day. Doesn't sound revolutionary, but it is for me,
No,
right?
it is. I'm so glad you said that. There, like my friend is the next thing. There is Sadada Jackson is going to be a guest on the show, and she has a revolutionary reading hour, like just silent space. And I'm going to join because I had a guest, Lawrence Barronert, here, and I was like, I started crying on the show. I was like, I don't read anymore. And I was like, it's because I'm so inundated with having to respond to everything that it's like I skim the articles and I make my analysis and then I don't, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I said, I used to have a love of reading. Like I had like A's in reading, like, you know what I'm saying? And I just don't have that desire anymore because I'm churning and pushing out. So I'm glad that you're saying self-care is an hour of reading.
It can
The
be.
hour.
I mean, you know, back before the pandemic, maybe it was a new pair of shoes, or maybe it was getting a pedicure, or, you know, for me, I'm not an outdoorsy person, but I do like to, you know, I like to container garden, you know, okay, so not fancy, very suburban or whatever. I'm not out there in nature, but there's something about putting your hands in earth. And so we grow a lot of our own herbs that we put in our spaghetti sauces and whatever. And just that 30 minutes or whatever.
Have you tried nasturtium?
I have not. What is
Okay, so neither have I. Well, I did technically yesterday. But it's like salt and pepper. I felt like every single white woman that was like in my area before that was like, I eat garden greens or whatever. I was like, what the fuck is that? I'm not eating that shit. Whatever. A Black person gave me nasturtium yesterday and we all ate it at the same time. We were probably high. And it's like this very pungent, like salt and pepper taste. So it's not what I'm suggesting it. It was good. I would eat it. I would eat it. Like I
No,
would.
I'm open to it. So we have, whatever, basil and rosemary and thyme and oregano
Yes.
and
I
stuff like
smell
that.
your garden
But
already.
but there's something about just putting your, reconnecting with the earth, because
Okay.
so we live on sidewalks and in our cars, and we don't do that
Mm,
kind of thing. So even 30 minutes out, outside in the sun, so I'm getting my vitamin D and my melanin on. I'm reconnecting with the earth. I'm having a conversation with the butterflies. So whatever your self care looks like for you, just make sure it's consistent and unapologetic.
thank you. Thank you so much for that. I'm actually going to lean into that uncomfortableness. I'm like, please at me next time. My last question is very much part of who I am as a person. It is a two-pronged question. It's my favorite type of question.
Okay.
Is
I may
there
only remember half, so you may have to give me the
no,
second.
no, no. We gonna fold
Okay.
into each other
Okay.
with this one. So okay. Um, is there anything that you're actually surprised? Because as I said, this show is you and I curating it, right? And so like I'm building off your energy. I really had no questions. So is there anything that you were surprised that I didn't ask you, or is there something that you were like, oh, you know what? Let me clarify this. And then the second part is if you haven't watched my show, why not? Why? And who would you like to see on the show? Like who would be a good fit to be
Yeah.
on the show?
No, there isn't anything. When I get asked to do, podcasts or conversations or whatever, I'm just free flowing. I will answer any question asked. But I really wanted to, I figured there's a reason why you asked me to be on the show, and there's something that you want to know from me. And so it's my job to provide it. So no, we went in the direction that you wanted to go, and I just sort of added myself, and we were on this 4-lane highway
Okay.
together.
Yes.
With respect to, I mean, I would love to see, have you had Alicia Garza? I don't think so, right?
No, I haven't, but I'll
Yeah,
definitely put her name down
National
on the
Domestic
list.
Workers Union, all around badass, amazing woman,
Okay.
has been down with the movement for Black lives from the very beginning. A queer woman living in California, I think. Um,
Okay. I don't know her, but I'll definitely put her
yeah,
name down. I'm
she's
gonna tag
Alicia
it.
Garza on everything, and
Okay.
actually, if you watch MSNBC, she's been on quite a bit lately, having these rough conversations about police brutality, and and progress that we can make during this time. Because for me, it really feels like everything is on the table.
Right.
I
Okay.
think and part of that is because of the protests, and because we see a whole bunch of non-Black people at the protests, right?
Right.
In my mind, a lot of our civil rights icons were assassinated because they started to appeal to white folks, right?
Ooh.
So MLK was about to really begin in earnest the Poor People's Campaign, right? So
Right.
it wasn't just the Montgomery bus boycotts anymore. He was talking about all poor people. Malcolm X was about to
I'm
go to
like,
the
just keep it with
UN.
us.
Yes, and Malcolm X was about to go to UN and air everybody out, and he had evolved so much in those few years to where he was like, no, the white man isn't the devil anymore, because
Right.
that's where he started.
Right.
But I will, extend a hand, and there may be ways in which we can work together. Fred Hampton,
Yeah.
same thing every single time, because to me, white supremacy and patriarchy say, okay, well, if that's just them Negroes over there and we can sort of keep them corralled, fine. But
Right.
when,
Right.
especially the poor whites, right, because there are a whole bunch of them, but when white folks get involved, now we need to see what's going on. And so bringing that to today, the fact that we see so many white folks on the street saying Black Lives Matter, I think that's why we're seeing the
I'm
change.
triggered. I'm like, what
Yeah,
are
I
y'all
know.
talking
I'm not
about?
giving any credit to white folks. Let me be very
Yeah, I'm like,
clear.
I just want to know what they're talking about.
Well,
What do you mean when you say that?
I don't know that it matters, as long as there are
Right.
moments of
That's
that.
in a sense, that's what I mean. I'm like, what does that mean to you? Like, I mean, what are you gonna do? Like,
Right,
So
right. But I think that there are some that are open to change, right? And so we're also having those very tough conversations about do not ask Black people for labor. Like, don't come up to me and ask me, what does it mean to be Black? Tell me your experiences. How do I learn to be an ally or an anti-racist? I don't,
right.
Google that shit. I can't.
Right.
Sorry about my language. I can't.
I fucking love your language. It's fine.
I don't have time for that. And there's so many more intelligent people than me, and erudite people than me who have already written about those things, that
Right.
when you tell me you've read all the books, right, and you still have questions, then, I'm gonna find you a video or something, but that's not my job.
Thank you, April. It's been amazing to have you as a guest on the show. And I didn't have an objective. I just reached out to people that I follow and that I know have a great analysis on these moments. Because I reached out to you in April, and so coincidentally didn't so it's I didn't actually have an angle here. I was like, I just want amazing people. Like, I've had people with no followings. I've had, I just want amazing people and uplifting Black stories. And so that's what we're here to do. And I appreciate you sharing like your journey and like how it meshed into what it is today. And I appreciate you for that. Thank
Of
you.
course. I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a really interesting and fun conversation.
Try the nasturtium. And so this is this has been another episode of The Full Set. I hope y'all have an amazing night. Peace.